Earlier this year, I received an unexpected phone call. It jarred me from the normalcy of my day and made me question my character. The call was a woman asking me to give a reference for a former colleague from before my rabbi days, someone I had once trusted. I'd been his supervisor and went out on a limb for him, and then we had a falling out. He betrayed my confidence. I can still feel the pain from that time. And now his potential employer was on the phone asking me for a reference. I had the presence of mind to ask her if I could call her back. I took a deep breath, and I suddenly realized I was smiling. I'd been given an unusually easy way to get back at him. I don't think of myself as a vengeful person. Does anyone think of themselves in this way? Prior to this phone call, I would have likely told you that I didn't have the capacity within me for such a raw emotion. But there I was, imagining how I could wreak vengeance upon my former colleague. And I was reveling in it. Have you ever wanted to get back at someone? In preparing for this sermon, I spoke to others who told me they had felt exactly the same way towards family members, friends, workmates, and neighbors. I'm so grateful for their honesty. Psychologist Salth notes that revenge has mostly to do with expressing rage or spite. It's a protest or payback, and its purpose is to harm. Some say it's to get even. It's not about justice, but about retaliating against some wrong done. Many consider revenge a human, primal response to being hurt. This was confirmed by every person I spoke with. Our desire for payback wasn't something we carefully considered. It came irrationally from some deep instinctive place. Experiences of hurt, anger, guilt, loss, and even loneliness, and their aftermath can derail us from the paths that we've set forth for ourselves. Each new year, our tradition calls us to return to our best selves. Teshuvah's literal translation is return. We're urged to return to our purest selves, to tap into the goodness with which we began. Renewal requires figuring out what's really working and what's really not. We have to look hard at the past, not wistfully, not philosophically, but nakedly, uncompromisingly. Without candor, we can never get back on track. The hard work of teshuvah is not always pleasant, but we know it's crucial. After all, this is our life. It's our precious life. When I look back at that phone call, I was shaken by my own response and how this feeling of revenge contradicted my identity. It also made me more alert about the stories of revenge that have been playing out on a much greater way around the world. Rabbi Buchtal read earlier this morning a number of these incidents as we reviewed the key events of this past year. Last September, the Bridgegate scandal began with an email that read, "Time for some payback, time for some traffic problems in Fort Lee." Earlier this summer in Israel, tragically, 3 Israeli teens were murdered, and soon after, a young Palestinian was killed in a revenge attack. In mid-July, in the Netherlands and Australia, cries of revenge were heard from grief-stricken families of civilians on the Malaysian Airlines flight shot down over the Ukraine. And only a few weeks ago, Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri. Afterwards, there were protests seeking justice and other voices wanting revenge. This has been a sobering year where too often revenge has taken center stage. I examined our ancient texts and discovered this theme of revenge is no stranger to our Torah. Esau held a grudge for 2 decades against his brother Jacob for tricking him out of his birthright and for cheating him with blunt deception. When Jacob decides he wants to return and make amends with his brother, Esau assembles an army of 400 men. Their intent is to slay Jacob and all of his clan, but unexpectedly and at the very last moment, they reconcile peacefully. The book of Kings describes King David on his deathbed with his son Solomon at his side. He speaks to Solomon about a man David had once spared. David now wants his son to kill the same man, saying to Solomon in his final words, "You're a man of wisdom. You'll know what to do with him. Take his gray head down to the grave in blood." And then there's God. Numerous times throughout the Hebrew Bible, God is described as vengeful. This Friday night, right here from this bima, we will read Parshat Hazinu, in which Moses speaks on God's behalf and says, "Vengeance I will wreak upon all my foes." Shabbat Shalom, everyone. There is so much longing for retribution in our Bible that some might posit vengeance a core Jewish value. We know this couldn't be further from the truth. What we do know is that the Bible is timeless in describing the human condition, including the desire to seek payback. Yes, it's difficult to discover a patent Jewish response to the subject of vengeance in the Bible, but 2,000 years ago, the Rabbi set a new course for us as Jews. Their interpretations and practices shaped the Judaism we live today. These rabbis took a strong and clear stance against acting upon the desire to seek revenge. Later, Rabbi Zalman of Liadi concluded that one should erase any feelings of revenge from one's heart. But how are we to do this when our gut is eager to retaliate? The rabbis teach we must first honor our pain. We do not turn the other cheek reflexively. We are human. And the stories of our Bible affirm our passions, both loving and vengeful. And yet the rabbis teach we are not animals. We have principles and systems that guide us. We have laws. For this reason, just weeks after crossing into freedom through the Red Sea, the Torah says that Moses set up a sophisticated court system to help the Israelites manage their conflicts. Even then, with abundant miracles and God at their side, the Israelites were causing each other a lot of tsuris, and they needed mediation. This first justice system was central to keeping their society healthy. It is the same justice system upon which many others have been built. Later, the Torah proclaims, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice must we pursue. A noble text, yes. But our rabbis also knew that the Torah contained more troubling words, such as an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life. How did the sages reconcile the two? They demanded that we prioritize the Torah's call for justice over the seemingly unambiguous eye for an eye text. They did this 2 millennia before Gandhi remarked that if we practice an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, soon the whole world will be toothless and blind. The rabbis maintained that the Torah never intended to mandate physical punishment as recompense for personal injury. Instead, perpetrators must pay financial restitution, commensurate with the victim's injury. Justice, and not self-destructive revenge, would be meted out in Jewish courts. Early on in its history, our beloved Israel faced a gut-wrenching question: whether or not to enter into a reparations agreement with the West German government for the atrocities of the Holocaust. Can you imagine the debate within Israel? It was fierce and emotional and complicated. Civil war was threatened. At the time, Prime Minister Ben-Gurion stated, "My approach is of an independent people. I don't want to run after a German and spit in his face. I don't want to run after anybody. I want to sit here and build Israel." His focus was on justice and the future of his nation. Israel's Knesset approved the treaty by a 61-50 margin. The agreement paved the way for what was once unthinkable: a strong and supportive relationship between the two countries. Germany remains one of Israel's great allies, and for more than 6 decades it has vigorously legislated against anti-Semitic elements within its borders. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 27 years by the apartheid government in South Africa. He and his supporters could have instigated a bloodbath after he was freed. But instead of wreaking havoc on the minority that imprisoned him, Mandela chose to heal and rebuild his country. Institutions such as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission worked hard to mend his land after years of profound injustice and pain. Mandela's leadership continues to be heralded for its integration of forgiveness and mercy and humanity. I want to be clear that individuals and countries have the right to defend themselves. There is a difference though, between self-defense and revenge. In the wake of suffering and loss, Israel and Germany and South Africa chose paths that led to peace and have put an end to or have minimized cycles of violence. This is the mandate of our people. We need more reconciliation and restraint in this world. My words this morning are meant primarily for each of us individually. They're meant to be applied to our relationships with our family and our friends and our colleagues. And yet I pray that our citizenry and our leaders will courageously control ourselves and not succumb to revenge as a motive for political action. Judaism requires this of us. I know in the face of national hurt, there is pressure and desire to act ruthlessly. Unending and increasing cycles of violence are not the answer. It destroys us and corrupts our souls. We know this in our hearts. We can and we must find other ways to deal with our grievances. Our world's future depends on our ability to do so. Judaism clearly urges us again and again to act in ways that affirm life and heal what's broken. We cannot do this if we're wrought up in our hurt and our thirst for payback. Our tradition's wisdom surrounding revenge and other destructive yearnings exists to protect our soul and help us deal with life's challenges. When we address our obstacles, when we take responsibility and face our own faults, we can get back on track and return to what our lives are supposed to be all about. According to an old Hasidic legend, a Jew had a dream that in the marketplace was a man dressed as a beggar who was in actuality the Messiah. The Jew awakened and rushed to the designated place to the man in beggar's clothes. "Are you the Messiah?" he asked. "I am," said the man. The Jew said, "With so much cruelty, injustice, and callousness in our world and in the lives of people, what are you waiting for?" To which the Messiah responded, "With so much cruelness, injustice, and callousness in the world and in the lives of people. What are you waiting for? It is our task, if we would but only grasp it, to return to being beacons of justice and kindness, mercy and forgiveness to those we know in this world and those we do not. Releasing ourselves from the desire for revenge and other constraints that bind us, allow us to best answer this ultimate call. Our congregant of blessed memory, Sheila Rosenblatt, volunteered at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women. There was one time when court-appointed advocates asked Sheila to convince a convict named Marina, a mother of a young child, to put up her daughter for adoption. Marina maintained her innocence and vehemently refused to consider giving up her child to another parent. She wanted to reach across the table and lash out at Sheila, who could feel her fury. Sheila could have reported this behavior. It could have been used against Marina. Instead, Sheila listened to her. She researched Marina's case and changed her position. She called Marina through the prison phone system and said, "I want to help you go home to your daughter." 2 years later, Marina's sentence was commuted. Sheila drove her car and picked her up on the cold February day that she was released and drove her directly to her daughter. They became true friends. More than 30 years later, Marina sat at Sheila's funeral with her daughter at her side to lovingly say goodbye. A few weeks ago, I met with a group of religious school parents, and one said, "With all that's going on here in New York City, I want my child's soul to be nurtured here at Central." Yes, we teach the alphabet to our kids, and we teach and model mercy, hamishness, and how to be a mensch. Our students learn the Jewish precept that each of them has a pure soul that can be restored and renewed. This is the same pure soul that we aim for during these days of awe within ourselves, no matter our age and no matter our hurt. On Shabbat morning here, we recite a modern-day prayer that reminds me of the purity and goodness that can reside within me and within each of us. It reads, "Create a pure heart within me. Let my soul wake up in your light. Open me to your presence. Flood me with your Holy Spirit. Then I will stand and sing out the power of your forgiveness. And I will teach your love to the lonely, and the lost will find their way home." Each of us, even if we are lost, can return home and revive our hearts and our souls. When people who have hurt us extend sincere offers of apology, we can forgive. We who have caused pain can say, "I'm sorry," and ask those we injured for forgiveness. These are acts of mercy that restore us and others. This is our calling. As for my opportunity to get back at that old colleague when I was asked for a reference, after much thought, I chose not to seek revenge. It was time for me to let go, to move on from the complex series of events that had occurred so long ago. I felt immediately relieved. I still feel lighter. I am better able to focus on the much more important tasks in my life. In this new year, may we do the hard work required of us to return to our best selves. Let us move through our anger. Let us reject any desire for payback. Instead, may we pursue justice, embrace compassion, forgive, and mend what we can repair. May each of us take full advantage of this beautiful life we have been given. Shana Tova.